Hi there, ladies and gents. Today we're going to be talking about the Max class, what my personal feelings are about the thing, and what I think needs changing. And yeah, some stuff does need changing. Now, overall, Maxes in general seem to be okay. They seem to go down under concentrated fire. Rockets can take them out, C4, mines, whatever, can take them out reasonably quick. But there are a few things that need looking at, which should be obvious to anybody who's actually played the game and come across them in combat, or who's actually started using the things as well. Now, despite T-Ray saying that only 4% of playtime is spent inside Maxes, they are quite dominating, and we're going to look into that. Now, to cut things short, if you want to stop the video after the next 20 seconds, basically I'm going to say that the NC are about right, the TR need a buff, and the VS, shock and surprise, need a nerf. So, let's have a look at what the details are. Now, what I want to do first is talk about the individual weapon styles that we've got within the Maxes, AA, AV and AI. Then what I'll do is I'll talk about the actual Max abilities themselves, which is where the bulk of the suggested changes come in. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the anti-aircraft weaponry, which, being that they're all completely identical, believe it or not, are pretty balanced against each other. Now, more importantly, they seem to be reasonably well balanced against aircraft as well, because we've gone through various phases since beta started, of max AA weaponry, their bursters being either overpowered or underpowered against aircraft, and them either completely sucking at the roll or completely dominating the skies. Now, it seems to me that the balance is more or less right. You have good live pilots, good Empire fighter pilots being able to take down AA maxes if they're smart, but if you've got a concentrated group of AA maxes, then they, as they should, be able to take down aircraft quite quickly. One thing to note though is that the TR do pull considerably less anti-aircraft maxes than the other Empires, possibly because they've got something else that's reasonably good at scaring off aircraft. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the anti-vehicle weapons on the Maxes. Now, they generally seem to be okay, getting a decent amount of kills per unique user if you look at the Oracle of Death stats. But there are one or two that don't appear to be pulling their weight, and those in particular seem to be the Falcon for the NC, the Pounder for the TR, and the Vortex for the VS. Now, that's even if you take into account the default status for the Falcon and Pounder and discounting those results because you've got the vast hordes of people that haven't got any certs in Maxes and are really low battle rank using the things. Now, those three weapons in particular I feel need a buff because they don't sit in line with the other ones in the class, and it's clearly obvious if you look at the stats that, say for example, the Comet is much more effective than the Vortex, Fracture is much more effective than the Pounder, etc, etc. Now, that's fine. Now, one thing I do want to mention before we move on is that the Fracture does appear to be very good at getting kills, and in particular getting kills just overall. Now, I think this is probably down to the fact that it's pretty good with the splash damage that it has at killing infantry, and when you look at it, it's way out of whack compared to the other ones, and this is also taking into account the Zoe being overpowered, as I'll mention later, and the equivalents and what I would expect if these things were to get nerfed. So yeah, I think the Fracture might need a look at, particularly the splash damage, maybe reduce that down a bit, because as an AV weapon you don't really need splash damage, do you? Okay, next thing I want to talk about is the anti-infantry weapons. Now, overall, looking at these, using Oracle of Death stats again, they're all pretty much comparable against each other within their empire. Now, despite that, TR are way down on the number of kills that they get, kills per unique user, and the VS are way, way better. Now, this ultimately comes down to the abilities, which we'll talk about next, but it does tell us that for the class that you've got, for the empire that you've got, they're reasonably balanced against each other, and there's no clear weapon in particular that's better. Say for the VS anti-infantry, it's like the Quasars. Well, it's comparable to, say for example, the Nebula, and the same for the NC and the TR. There's no huge difference between them. Now, the differences come when you look at the different empires, and ultimately, I think that's really down to the class abilities. Okay, now with these class abilities, I want to talk about the NC one first of all, because I think overall the NC is the most balanced of the Maxes. It's well rounded, the ability is solid, it just needs a few tweaks here or there. Now, what I would like to see is that this max ability, although it stops you from shooting and it gives you this extra shield, which I think is perfectly fine, that you've got one advantage, one disadvantage, and I think that really should be the way it is. I think it does need a few tweaks. I think the shield needs to be made slightly larger, and it also needs to be deployed slightly faster as well. So you press the button to deploy it, the shield comes up a lot quicker. Which if you watch Scourge of the Servers videos, he mentions that it's too slow. With latency and the rocket speed, it's too slow to protect you from a rocket that's incoming from a heavy assault if they're anywhere within 20, 30, 40 meters. So you need to be able to actually use it for its purpose. Made it slightly larger, slightly wider, so you can protect the people behind you, making it much more of a teamwork weapon as well, which is really helpful and really useful and interesting as well, because then you'll see some good tactics developing. But as I say, overall I think the NC max ability is the most well-rounded, just needs a few tweaks to make it spot on. Moving on from talking about the NC, I want to talk about the TR, because the TR is, well, crap. I mean, think about it. If you're fighting the TR, when was the last time you walked into a room of that had Terrans inside, and you look around, there's one or two TR maxes locked down, and you think, crap, and you just die? Not very many times. I mean, yeah, you see a max, and obviously it's a tough thing to deal with. However, you just don't get the same feel that you did back in the original game, where you'd turn a corner, there'd be 3 or 4 TR maxes locked down, and you just know you were dead, or you'd run away, and you'd have to find a different way into that building. Because what TR maxes should be about, it should be about taking and holding ground, and holding that ground until basically the TR want to leave. I mean, obviously there should be counters and tactics that can deal with it, but the TR max should be scary when you walk around a corner and find the thing. The TR should be advancing these things forwards in the field, taking ground, holding it, and stopping anybody else from being able to push back, because they'll have these fire bases set up. That's what the TR max should be. At the moment, it's not. It's a laughing stock. The TR basically don't use their ability, because why would they? It makes you stationary, making you a vulnerable target, so you can just pop around a corner, drop a rocket into them as a heavy assault, and skip back again, with very little risk to yourself. Now, if you look at the thing, obviously you've got your advantage, the fire rate increases. Now the fire rate can only increase up to, what, 50%? And that's pretty pathetic. What you need to be able to do is that it should perhaps start at 50%. So you start at 50% extra fire rate, and you work your way up as you go the certs. Maybe finishing up at, say, 80% or even 90%. I mean, hell, 100% would be quite interesting. But you then run into problems with people getting insta-gibbed and all the rest of it, which obviously isn't too fun if you're not playing a TR max course. But I think a definite damage increase needs to be put in place. Now you could potentially increase their armor, but I think it really should be a case with these max abilities that you have one disadvantage or one advantage to make up for it. And it should be about sacrifice. So the TR, you sacrifice maneuverability for a terrifying fire rate. Now it should take a little bit of time to lock down, but not a considerable amount. You should just be able to get this thing set up and start racking in the kills. But you've got to be wary of your situations and your surroundings, which is fair. Okay, so that's the TR one. Let's move on to the VS one, which is where really the problems lie. Now the VS have the Zoe, the Zealot Overdrive engine or something. Anyway, everyone calls it the Zoe. And what the Zoe did when it was introduced, because of course if you remember, the devs had no idea what to give the VS for their max ability, because they didn't want to give them their jump jets from the original, because obviously the light assaults had them. Now what they went for is something that improves their maneuverability, because it does make you move a lot faster, as you can see in the videos that are playing right now, because well, I've got it maxed out and it's pretty damn good. And I think in all fairness, if you're a VS, you'd be a fool not to use the thing. But they gave it maneuverability, but then they also increased the damage of the weapons. No, it only increased the damage by like 30% or something like that. Not a huge amount, but it does make the VS have 2 advantages, and the only disadvantage is that it increases the damage you take. So if you're taking fire, you switch the thing off, and that's okay. But the maneuverability, combined with the damage increase, makes the VS maxes dominate. And as, well, obviously people are aware, people shout for people to pull Zoes. They don't even say maxes half the time with the VS. We just say Zoe charge or something like this. And, yeah, it ain't balanced. I mean, I'm a VS, I use the max, as you can see. I've not got a massive amount of hours in it, but I'll admit it's stupidly easy to rack up kills with the thing. It's not challenging. I mean, yes, you still get taken down if people focus fire on you and if you make stupid mistakes, but as you can see from these 2 videos, I've lasted a long time, and I'm not an experienced max user. Sure, I've got the thing fully certified, but it's too easy. It is too easy to just get a lot of kills with the thing. And when you've got the numbers of VS using the max with Zoe, it gets silly. So we need to make this thing fair. Now to make the thing fair, what we really need to do is we need to look at potentially nerfing both the damage increase and the increase in the damage that you take when the ability is active, or you can have some kind of timer on it, some kind of ability charge timer. But really, what I think should really happen is that one of the perks should be removed, either remove the damage increase or remove the movement speed increase. Now sure, refund people certs, blah blah blah, all that rubbish, but one of those things needs to be done. One thing I do want to throw out there is perhaps the VS use Zoe maxes because the Lasher is so underwhelming, but ultimately the Zoe max does need a nerf, guys. So that's my rundown on maxes and what I think should ultimately happen with them. Now, I know that the devs are talking about doing something to them in the future, and I'm certain they will, because by looking at the stats, it's just simply not a situation where we currently want with the sheer imbalance and the hatred that a lot of people simply display for the Zoe, and the contempt that people have for the TR maxes and their ability being so poor. So, I've listened to my changes. Obviously the devs might have their own ideas, and I'm hoping they do. So, if you want to get involved in the discussion, please comment on these threads or head to the forums. But thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been interesting, thought-provoking, and get some discussion going between people. So, thank you very much for watching, guys, and good luck on the battlefield. Yeah, bunch of 1 point, guys. We need to get there and clean them out.
They got 2 sets of spawn beacons down north side. 1